on your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Chrissie is hilarious.
Chrissie, have you ever heard of the comedian Basha K. Ali?
No, that sounds like something you yell at before you blow up a plane.
Basha K. Ali!
30 seconds remaining.
But you know what, good to say I doubt it will stand up to something. I haven't been disrespectful to you at all.
I was very confused by the title, Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's also what we call it when Ash takes off his shirt.
I shouldn't be up here. I should be in school on the other side of the ocean.
Hello, boys and girls. Back from California. Excited to be home. This is another episode of the Chrissie Mayr podcast. You can find us on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Rumble, Rockfin, all of the places where you can listen to podcasts. I got a bunch of shows coming up. Tickets just went on sale for my New York City show, March 25th at the Grizzly Pear Midtown. I'm going to put those in my calendar soon so you guys can buy them. But I got two shows on the 25th of March, 8 and 10 o'clock at the Midtown location of the Grizzly Pear. I think that's on West 57th Street. After that, I'll be headlining in Staten Island at the Reef at Paradise Island. Sounds really tropical. I'm going to warn you, it's not. It's Staten Island. But if you live out there, I hope to see you. Friday, April 7th. Then Saturday, April 8th, I'll be headlining in Morris Plains, New Jersey at Tiff's Ale House. It's also known as the Dojo of Comedy, probably my favorite venue in Jersey. Then I'm heading to Texas, Dallas, Texas for Cinco de Mayo weekend, Friday, May 5th, Saturday, May 6th. I'll be at Hyenas headlining 2 shows Friday, 2 shows Saturday. Then we got Anime Matsuri coming up in August. That'll be out in Houston, Texas. August 10th through the 13th. Simcast will be there. We'll have a panel. We'll have a booth. And I'll be headlining that same weekend in Houston, Friday, August 11th at the Secret Group. Get your tickets now. It'll be kind of like an unofficial after party. Also, if you're going to be at the Friday Night Tights meetup in April in Vegas, I got to add this in too. I'm going to do a Vegas show in April 27th at the Secret Group. Tickets are not available yet. They should be by the end of the week. So I'll put that in my calendar as well. So if you're planning on going to Vegas for the FNT meetup for Friday Night Tights, you should definitely come to that show as well. It's going to be a hoot. And thank you to everybody who came out to California this past weekend. Pasadena sold out the Elks Lodge. It was great. It was like a speakeasy show. And then one of the shows at the San Diego Mic Drop was sold out. Lila Hart did a great job opening for me. We had a good time. We had a lot of fun. Okay, I'm so excited to have this guest on because I also feel like so embarrassed for not knowing more about this topic because just what little I've looked into it, it's so shocking that this was not more on my radar. But it is now, and we're going to talk about it. This woman is an activist. She's so great. This is how I know she really cares about this cause because I was like, what can we promote for you? And she's like, it's not about me. She is an activist. She hosts a show that maybe I'll get her to mention, but she doesn't want to make it about her because this is about Julian Assange. Welcome to the show. Her group Action for Assange is definitely one that you should familiarize yourself with. Misty Winston, thank you for joining me.
Yeah,
Hello.
thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the fact that you're willing to cover this. It's very important. So yeah, I mean, it's okay that you don't know. A lot of people don't. So now that you do, we can start spreading the word.
This is so crazy to me. So for probably the chat even knows more about this topic than I do, but correct me if I'm wrong. So basically, Julian Assange is a guy who he's not even American. He's an Australian journalist, publisher, critic of news, publisher of news. A woman in the Marines named Chelsea Manning, and I don't know how she did this, but she somehow leaked like just thousands of documents to gave them to Julian, and then Julian leaked them through WikiLeaks. I guess WikiLeaks was a thing that existed before all these documents came out. It was always a place because he's just basically a big free speech guy, and he wanted the public to be able to see certain documents. It's basically the connector between whistleblowers within big powerful organizations and the public, and WikiLeaks exists so that they can just post these documents. People can read them for themselves. But I guess it's what Julian calls scientific journalism. Like, maybe you can fill in the blanks for me. Like, do they give their own take on these documents, or do they just publish the documents to the site?
So WikiLeaks as an organization just publishes documents. Julian Assange himself will occasionally do interviews and interject his own personal opinions or whatever. But generally speaking, WikiLeaks as a publishing organization just publishes the documents. And WikiLeaks, when it was formed, was meant to be kind of a safe outlet for whistleblowers, because prior to that, it's really dangerous, obviously, as everybody probably understands. It's really dangerous as a whistleblower to come forward and to go to the media with a lot of really embarrassing material that the United States doesn't like or enjoy being published. So WikiLeaks was formed as a way for whistleblowers to have a place where they could release information while maintaining anonymity. And that means, even in most cases, not all, but in most cases, Julian Assange himself doesn't even know who his source is. Obviously, it was not the case with Chelsea Manning. She kind of outed herself, but in most cases, he didn't even know what his own sources was. So it was meant to be an outlet to provide a safe space for whistleblowers to release information without fear of, retribution or revenge, as we're seeing. And he also, said that it was supposed to be kind of an intelligence agency for the people.
Wow, which is so amazing. And I think definitely the lockdown in the last 3 years have woken up so many people that were just like politically disengaged. It seems like just politics, the government, everything that goes on is so far removed. Most people are honestly, and this is like the end of the day, most people just want to like make enough money to feed their family and like get by. And like literally they're just focused on themselves. And it doesn't mean you don't care or you don't think you can make a difference. It's just a lot of people just are focused on getting by. But I think the last 3 years and the lockdown really opened people's eyes to like just how kind of fucked up like our government is. And I think, like born and raised an American, you grow up thinking like we're the best country. We have Hollywood. We have freedom of speech. We are like, I don't know, we don't set fashion trends, but we eventually follow them and pick them up. Like, we're pretty fun. Like, our music is great. And then you become an adult and you're like, oh my God, we've done a lot of really fucked up shit abroad in wars. And that was this case with Julian is so crazy, and why they came after him so hard is that he released he somehow got 470,000 documents released about the Iraq and Afghanistan war logs. This was, I guess, came out between 2010 and 2011. State Department cables, and then it started this other thing called Cablegate, which I don't know why they call it Cablegate. They're essentially just emails, or it's communication between world leaders.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, those are called international cables, when that's the fancy word they use it, I guess, to make it more official. And obviously, anytime there's a scandal, you just slap gate on the end, and there you have it. Russiagate, Cablegate. That's kind of where that came from.
Also, Guantanamo Bay detainee assessment briefs, which I guess that's a jail for like really bad
torture facility.
It's a torture facility. It's not only a jail; it's a torture facility. And I don't know much about it. All I remember hearing is like Obama maybe entertained the idea of shutting it down, but I don't think that happened.
He didn't really. He said he was going to. He didn't mean it.
In this leak also included 15,000 previously uncounted civilian casualties. And there is a clip that is I guess it's been going around for years now. I just saw it for the first time. I'm like embarrassed. I'm like, how have I not seen this? But it's basically a video from one of the US's, I guess it's an Apache helicopter, and they're just shooting down basically civilians, and they killed 2 Reuters journalists, and then 2 kids were critically injured. It was a van on their way to school. I mean, I can't imagine those kids actually survived, but
yeah. Yes,
It
and that
showed
video, I
yeah.
highly recommend everybody go watch it. I'm not gonna lie, it's disturbing. Frankly, the audio on that video is more disturbing than the visual. I mean, obviously, seeing people slaughtered in the streets of Baghdad is disturbing, but it's the cavalier attitude that the soldiers and the Apache helicopters have. It's like it sounds like they're playing a video game. You know what I mean? Light them all up, and they're like laughing about it. And then at the end, when they notice that there are 2 kids in the van, oh well, they shouldn't have brought kids to a gunfight. Well, they didn't. The guy that was in the van happened upon. So first they came around, slaughtered a bunch of people, and then they circled back around, and the guy in the van was on taking those kids to school. And when he came upon the massacre, he stopped to render aid to the people who were dying in the streets, and then they shot him as well. And that's called a double tap. It's a war crime.
Oof.
It's on video. And it is really disturbing. Yeah.
So you kill the people that are trying to help the other people that just got attacked.
Yeah.
Yikes. This is such a yikes, because I'm like, oh, like, and everything. And it's like, can you blame the soldiers? I mean, I'm sure their training is they get them to a place where they have to be kind of disconnected and a bit dehumanized.
That's
and
the culture of war.
Yeah.
It really is. That's the
they wanna
culture of war.
take your empathy away so that you can get the job done. It's just when you see what the job is, you're like, yikes, this is pretty fucked up. Like, people die in war, but that clip in particular is like, oh, this doesn't seem necessary. And it also seems like they're kind of enjoying it, which sucks.
Yeah. And it's really the tip of the iceberg. I mean, in those releases, there are stories of about a 6-year-old who was murdered with a drill, entire families being slaughtered, an entire car being blown up that was filled with kids because they drove too fast. And some 18-year-old soldier decided that they needed to be, taken care of. That really is just the tip of the iceberg. The collateral murder video is the only real video evidence that we have, but the stories that were released in the cables and the information that was released through WikiLeaks is really gross. And it's very frustrating to me because the only people who have ever been held accountable for all of the atrocious war crimes that were released in those leaks is Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange. It's the only people who have ever
happened during like the Bush administration, basically.
Yep. That's happened in the streets of Baghdad, the collateral murder video. But yeah, this is all Iraq in like 2003 to 2005, 2006 ish. And the information was released in 2010 and 2011, as you mentioned. And it's really disturbing. 15,000 unaccounted deaths, which you can go to iraqbodycount.com. They've been trying to gather information and give names to the victims of that war. And they worked extensively with WikiLeaks on that, trying to get, some accountability for the just really unnecessary deaths. This was a war based on a lie to begin with. And so, having these releases, you would hope that there would be a bigger outcry, more outrage. And certainly you would hope that people would call for, the people who ordered the war crimes to be punished. And instead it's the whistleblower and the publisher.
Right. And what most people remember most recently is how we got out of Afghanistan, which seemed very, I'm not a military person, but it seemed very shitty, like the shittiest way to get out. We left a bunch of weapons and military stuff behind that they collected and used.
What could possibly go wrong, Chrissy?
It just seems all over just a bad job overall. And so he releases these hundreds of thousands of documents, and I'm confused. So like Chelsea Manning, I guess she was somewhere in the military. How did she even, like, I've worked places where I'm like, wow, they're doing some fucked up shit. Could I tell someone about this? Like, is this right? How do you even get this? Like, how would she even get that many documents? Like, do we know anything about her process of waking up and being like, passing this on?
She was an Army intelligence analyst. So that was her job, was essentially to, look over this information. And she had really become disillusioned with her time in the service. She was also going through a lot personally. Obviously, she was, at the time, Bradley Manning was dealing with gender dysphoria, has openly spoke about her struggles with depression.
Oh, wait,
stuff like that.
Chelsea transitioned?
Yes. Yeah, she's formerly Bradley Manning.
Oh shit. Okay,
Which
so
I'm probably
she
gonna
was
get canceled by the left for dead naming her,
okay.
but
That's
that's
okay.
historical. It's
We're
a
all just
historical.
trying our best to understand it. So while Chelsea was in the military, Chelsea was Bradley.
Yes,
Okay.
and she was an intelligence analyst at the time, and I'm glad that you brought that up because often one of the things that's leveled against Assange is that he somehow helped her crack a passcode, and that's just not the case. She had security clearance for all of the information that she leaked to WikiLeaks, so there was never any, hacking on the part of WikiLeaks or Chelsea Manning. She had security clearance. She had access to all of the information that she released. So they will often try to smear him with that, and it's been effective. There's been a lot of smears leveled against him. That's just one of them, but that's inaccurate. He did not hack anything, or there was no passcode breaking. None of that.
What was Chelsea then Bradley's position in the military? Do we know that?
Private first class. Oh, I should know
Okay.
that. But yeah, she was an intelligence analyst, so that was kind of her job, was to deal with intelligence. And she, I think, as most people who become whistleblowers, it was a process. Like over time, you start to become disillusioned. You start to see things that don't make sense, or that start to kind of nag at the back of your brain, and then eventually it becomes too much. And to anybody who says she should have gone through proper channels, she tried. I don't know a single whistleblower, and I know a lot of whistleblowers and have studied whistleblowers. I don't know a single whistleblower who didn't attempt first to go through proper channels before going to media. And it's, how do you go through proper channels when the people who you're supposed to be going through in order to report these things are involved in the crimes?
What
They're not going to hold themselves accountable.
what would have been the proper channels? Like the more
Just
mainstream
going
news?
to her higher ups,
Okay.
the people in command or whatever. There's a process in the military that you go through in order to expose things if you have an issue with them. But again, the people who are over her in the military are people who are directly involved in the stuff that she released. So
Right. Like what if she was
obviously,
like, "Oh yeah, I saw this video where we're just kind of killing indiscriminately and like they're enjoying themselves. Like this is fucked up, is it not?" And then the guy
yeah,
would be like, "Welcome to war." I don't know. I
yeah,
just
yeah. That's really essentially what it is.
yikes. Okay. So do we know how much time that like Chelsea took to amass all these documents? Like was it a steady kind of passing along of documents to
It was
Julian, or did she somehow get hundreds of thousands of documents together on a thumb drive and like I don't know how you would even send that over.
It was pretty quick. I think that she gave them the information. Obviously, it took WikiLeaks some time. Another smear that's leveled against them often is that they're very cavalier, and they're not very careful about the way that they leak things. They don't redact enough names. Blah blah blah. That's not the case. Their redaction process is incredibly thorough. And being a very 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 small organization, I mean, they don't have a lot of staff. It does take some time, and so it did take time to get the documents ready to be released to like mass publications. So they did kind of, and also I think it's smart if you're a publisher not to just dump everything all at once. And WikiLeaks has usually done, kind of a trickle of leaks. And I think that that's really just so that they get the most eyes on them. They want people to see it. And if you just do a mass dump, people will become overwhelmed. They won't bother to look through it. And also with the Iraq and Afghanistan war logs, they worked with 5 major publications around the world: the New York Times, the Guardian, Der Spiegel, Le Monde, and I'm forgetting one. But it wasn't just them, and that's what's so interesting about what's happening to Assange, is that he is not the only one who published this material. Why isn't the New York Times in Belmarsh prison right now? Why aren't the journalists from Le Monde in Belmarsh right now? It's only him, and it's really just because he poses the most threat, given he really did revolutionize journalism and was the first person really to hold the US empire to account. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So he's Australian, but he's now in basically the UK equivalent of Guantanamo Bay, which is Belmarsh prison. And of course, our government, I guess this is what makes this case really wild, is that the US is basically exercising the press freedom beyond its borders. So like
Yeah.
Julian was in the UK, but the US was like, well, we're the US, so we want to put this guy in prison. And then so the UK government was just like, sure, whatever you say. Like, what
Yeah.
was that process like?
So like you said earlier, he's not American. And so if I could boil this case down to like a single sentence, it really does just amount to the United States is seeking global jurisdiction over information and journalism. And that's really what this is. And they're using Assange really to send a message to other whistleblowers and other journalists. But I mean, listen, the UK is our bitch. They always have been. I mean, since since the Revolutionary War. I mean, yeah, they are our bitch, and they do as they're told. They have on a number of issues. Iraq is a great example. They went along with that as well. And so there's really been kind of multiple countries involved in the persecution of Assange: Australia, Ecuador, the UK, Sweden, and the United States. So this is like a multi-country effort to kind of destroy journalism. And yeah, I mean, so he was in London just working on stuff. I mean, he was kind of, he spent a lot of time there, I think, because it's very central to Europe and easy to travel in those areas. There was a case in Sweden, accusations in Sweden. There were never any charges. But as they often do, they use sexual assault charges or accusations against people like Julian Assange or other whistleblowers, because it's a very easy way to tarnish somebody's reputation. And it's really difficult to argue or fight back against those claims. So there was a case in Sweden. We now know through other leaks that they were kind of forced into pursuing that case. And in fact, when they dropped the investigation, they were sent an email saying, "Don't you dare get cold feet now." So they were using Sweden as a way to try to get, if they were able to get him back to Sweden, then they would have used Sweden to extradite him back to the United States. So he was in Sweden at the time when that whole accusation was brought forward. Before he left Sweden, he asked permission. He said, "I'm totally willing to cooperate in this investigation." And he asked permission and then waited 2 weeks before he left. And so he went to the UK. And then he knew that there was a sealed indictment against him. They kept claiming that there wasn't. Everybody made fun of him. "Oh, he's so paranoid. He's so paranoid. There's no indictment." There was an indictment. But he was smart and went to the Ecuadorian embassy and sought asylum. That was granted. But he was unable to get out of the UK because once he steps, so the embassy is Ecuadorian territory. So it's a sovereign, it's kind of a little part of a country inside of another city. So as long as he was on Ecuadorian territory inside the embassy, he was fine. But if he would have stepped 1 foot outside of the embassy, UK police could have easily arrested him and then extradited him back to the United States. So he was stuck in the Ecuadorian embassy for then 7 years trying to avoid extradition back to the United States.
Do you think he knew that there was a chance this was all going to happen to him when he published it?
Yeah, there's actually a really famous quote from him right before he released Cablegate in 2010, and I'm going to butcher it, but he said, "They will chase me to the ends of the earth. They will do everything they can to destroy me, but it's the right thing to do. I have to publish this information." He's always known that this was a possibility. And I think that's why he very much kind of made himself the public figurehead of WikiLeaks in an effort to kind of divert attention away from other staff members solely onto himself.
Wow.
Which, I mean, people will argue that that was smart or not smart, but it did. I mean, listen, they still go after WikiLeaks staff, no question about it. But it did really kind of level most of the attention onto him. And so he's really facing the brunt of all of the bullshit.
Wow. So I imagine, I mean, this made the US look so bad. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this part of these leaks is why and how people know that basically Hillary and her crew like majorly screwed over Bernie Sanders and completely sandbagged his chances
Yes.
of coming up. And I imagine this made the US government very upset. How come they're not able to take down WikiLeaks? Like how have they been able to keep publishing these documents? I mean, I imagine our government would really want this to stop because it makes us look so bad.
Yes. Well, WikiLeaks is, I mean, they're very, very smart. They know exactly what they're doing. They base themselves out of, different countries. So it's really difficult for the United States to get to their servers, all of that stuff. Trust me, there have been multiple attempts, DDoS attacks, all of that stuff in an attempt to take WikiLeaks down. Some have been successful. Recently, there's been some attacks on the website and on the information. that's been published. But it's been kind of a difficult thing for the U.S. to tackle because we claim to care about free speech and the First Amendment and free press and all of that stuff, which is why it's been, I don't know, 4 administrations now, at least 3 administrations that have struggled with how to handle their Julian Assange problem. And I mean, there's a multitude of different ways that they could deal with him. There was a release from the Stratfor files that Julian Assange himself released, where there was a conversation on how to deal with him. And one of the ways that they discussed was to tie him up in legal stuff for the next 25 years, which is exactly what they're doing. And if he's in Belmarsh, he's silenced. And so they're really just kind of trying to, erase him from public consciousness, because it's a lot easier to torture somebody if you can do it behind closed doors.
And this is a story. It's basically any journalist or any truth seeker should be very concerned about this story. And I don't think I've seen it covered very much at all by any of the mainstream channels. Why would they avoid that?
I mean, because they're not really journalists. They are paid propagandists for power. And they know that this isn't coming for them. They play by the rules. They publish what they're told to publish. And WikiLeaks really exposed that too. You mentioned the emails that were embarrassing to Hillary Clinton. In part of that, it showed that there were numerous journalists who were going to off-the-record parties with the Hillary Clinton campaign. There were journalists like Glenn Thrush who were literally sending stories to the Hillary Clinton campaign for approval before publishing them. So yeah, mainstream media is completely corrupt and bought off. They are not actual journalism. And so I don't feel like they think that this really impacts them, because that's not the game that they play. They're not in the business of exposing power. They're in the business of covering for power. So it is frustrating that more mainstream outlets aren't talking about it, just given that it really does impact the future of their entire profession, if that were their profession, but it's not. But it's also really frustrating that a lot of independent media doesn't talk about it. And I know why, because if you cover Assange, you will likely be shadow banned. You will, algorithmically, you'll get hit. That's just the way that it works. And so I think a lot of indie journalists and independent, pages and websites and channels are afraid to cover it. But it's a big fucking deal. I mean, I really can't overstate, if Julian Assange is allowed to be extradited, he will be the first journalist ever charged under the Espionage Act. And that opens Pandora's box. And that means any journalist anywhere at any time can be arrested and extradited for publishing the truth. We should mention that WikiLeaks has never gotten it wrong. They've never had to retract a single word they've ever published in their entire existence. And so to me, and we should also point out too, that they don't deal in conjecture. As you mentioned, like, do they offer their opinion? And Assange would do interviews and talk about stuff. But what WikiLeaks does is publish 100% verifiable, authenticated source documentation. That's it. It's just black and white. It's the emails, it's the cables, it's the Guantanamo manual. That's all they do, is just publish black and white facts. And that's invaluable, I think. I mean, that's, like you said, it's scientific journalism. It really does make journalism as much of a science as it can possibly. And I mean real science, not Fauci science. It's real science. But yeah, and that's what makes this so really, really scary and we should also make it clear that they decide what a journalist is. So it could be a blogger, it could be you. If you tweet out a WikiLeaks link, or if you tweet out a story that they don't like, that can mean you. This could come for all of us. And it really does open the floodgates to just complete unaccountable power. It's really scary. I mean, it is really scary. And we should mention too, that it's not just the United States. If we do this, then that means Turkey can also, they can use this as kind of the jumping off point, and they can say, okay, well, if the United States can do it, so can we. And so if somebody publishes something that's damaging or embarrassing to Turkey, or Saudi Arabia, or Russia, or Iran, or whoever, this could really open the floodgates for just a really terrifying amount of power for people who already have too much of it.
And he's just such a good example of someone who is so smart, and the government doesn't want anybody smarter than them, or have be better at releasing information or be better at, their goal is to have all the best people working for them and keeping their secrets for them. And Julian was super smart. I guess he was raised in Australia. He figured out how to code at 15, and by 17 he was helping like basically get internet to people in Australia. Like, I don't know the full story. I was just watching a video, one of the videos you sent me, and I just was like, okay, he just seems like brilliant from a young age.
Brilliant. When he was a child, his nickname was the Wizard because he was like just so incredibly intelligent. And the secure Dropbox that we all use now, right? Everybody uses a secure Dropbox. That was WikiLeaks. I mean, that was really a product of WikiLeaks and their work in trying to figure out a way to give whistleblowers a safe outlet to release information. And so, and now all media outlets use it. Most people, like most just everyday average people, use that system now. And I mean, it really can't be overstated that they genuinely revolutionized the way that information is shared. And the way that we're able to hold or to kind of peek behind the curtain behind power. I mean, and what they release is really just like a tiny little bit of what's going on behind our backs. I mean, we have completely unaccountable government. There's no transparency. They do whatever they want, whenever they want. There's black sites all over the world. They're torturing people. They're overthrowing democratically elected governments. They're stealing resources. And we don't have any way to hold them accountable. We don't even know what they're doing. And WikiLeaks was really an effort to kind of change that and reverse course, and start to be able to hold these people, accountable for the grossest crimes that you can imagine. I mean, what's
a black site?
It's a torture site, CIA torture site.
Okay, so it's not a website. It's like an actual place where.
Yeah, and actually, one of the people who testified in Julian's hearings in September of 2020 was Khalid al-Masri, who was a German citizen who, due to mistaken identity, was kidnapped by the CIA, taken to a torture facility, tortured, despite the fact that they knew that they eventually figured out that they had gotten the wrong guy. And then they just took him to Albania, I think it was, and dropped him off, gave him a T-shirt, and went about their business. And Khalid al-Masri was able to use WikiLeaks in order to prove what happened to him and get some accountability in court. And he's not the only one. That happens a lot.
How did Chelsea Manning think to pick Julian as the person to send all these send all these documents to?
Well, she had tried going to other like mainstream news, and as we mentioned, they don't really give a shit about holding power to account, so they didn't bite. And because she is also a computer person, like she's very a computer scientist kind of a person. Obviously, she was an intelligence analyst. That's what she does. And so she had heard about WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks was fairly small at the time. Prior to the Guantanamo files, they had done a couple of releases, nothing really that was huge. Just like a little bit of corruption here, a little bit of war crimes there, or not war crimes, but just crimes.
Just a little,
yeah. A little,
just a manageable amount
as a treat. But yeah, she kind of knew about, had heard about WikiLeaks, just in her work and stuff, and reached out to him on the internet, and kind of the rest is history.
Wow, this is so wild.
Yeah.
This is a horrible precedent.
And we're really only touching the surface of this. Like, there's so much that's gone on over the past 3 or 4 years, or the information that's come out. For example, we've learned that there were plots to either kidnap or assassinate Julian Assange that were at the highest levels of the Trump administration, mostly Mike Pompeo, because so in March of 2017, and this is probably one of my favorite stories about Julian Assange, because I think it really does just kind of show his character. So March 2017, he's already years into illegal and arbitrary detention in the Ecuadorian embassy. He already knows he's public enemy number 1 of the world's largest empire. He knows that. He's not a fool. And so in March of 2017, he released Vault 7, which is the largest CIA leak in history. The balls that it takes to be Julian Assange and know that they're already coming for you, and then go ahead and publish Vault 7, which is hugely
you figure you might as well. Like they already Like
But
if you're okay with the idea that they're going to kill you, like,
Yeah.
and you're like, well, this is for the greater good. Why not?
And I think that
Yeah.
I think most Assange supporters would agree that that was really the tipping point. I think up until then they were kind of content to let him hang out in the embassy. Like they didn't like it and they would love to be able to get him, but they were like, not really. Our hands are kind of tied. But once they released Vault 7, Mike Pompeo is a psychopath. Like, dude is completely unhinged. And he was CIA director at the time. And he went on, it was now like a personal vendetta for him. In fact, in April of 2017, he gave his first speech as CIA director. And if you go watch it, it's almost entirely about WikiLeaks. I mean, it really
Wow.
got under his skin. So that really was kind of the jumping off point where they were no longer content to just let him hang out in the embassy. And that was really when the plots to assassinate him started to be developed. And then that was shut down because obviously that would be a really bad look. So they decided just to indict him and pull him out of the embassy. And now they're hoping to extradite him, and he faces 175 years in prison.
And what were kind of the biggest bombshells that came out of that most recent leak?
So many things. The vault, that's a big one. I think if you care at all about like privacy, or any of that stuff, or if you're worried about, the CIA, NSA, it's kind of Snowden-esque. It's kind of the
Okay.
Snowden version of the CIA. It exposed the way that they're able to spy on you using your phone, or which we all know, but your TV, the way that they're able to manipulate your car so they can cause accidents in if you're driving now that everything's
Oh,
computer.
like
Yeah.
with Anne Heche?
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Yes. Yes, exactly that kind of stuff. I mean, there's so many things in the Vault 7 leaks that we could do like a whole 2-hour show on just going through
Wow.
that. It's big.
I just thought the worst thing that they were doing was just looking at all my nudes in the cloud, and I was like, "You know what? You guys enjoy."
Everybody wave to the nice CIA agent that's watching the show right now.
Hi.
Hi, guys. Yeah.
Damn.
Yes. And they also, during his time in the Ecuadorian embassy, the CIA and also they kind of funded this through Sheldon Adelson, who is a Trump mega donor, like a big Vegas guy. I think he owns this, or he's dead now. Yay. But he was like he owned the Sands or whatever. But so there was a Spanish security firm called UC Global that was hired by the Ecuadorian government initially to provide security for the embassy. But then once Trump took office, they were very quickly co-opted and turned essentially into a spying service. And they put cameras and recording devices all over the Ecuadorian embassy. There was a microphone in the women's restroom so that they could spy on Julian Assange. Any of his visitors, all of their electronic devices were taken and cloned. All of their paperwork was copied, all of that stuff. And that includes, we should say, they were spying on conversations with his legal team. So that alone should be enough to throw this case out. There is absolutely no way possible that this man can get a fair trial in this country. They were spying on his conversations with his legal team. The people who are prosecuting him.
What angles they know what to say.
Yeah.
And this sucks because it's like it's easier if I want to think of Trump positively in my mind. Like I want to like him, I want to be on board, but it's really upsetting to learn that
I don't like Trump.
Why would he go out of his way? I mean, I know one of Trump's biggest thing was he exposed the fake media. He said fake news.
And he's right about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, he's right about that. But he's an opportunistic coward. I mean, this is a guy who in 2010 said that Julian Assange, there should be the death penalty for Julian Assange. And then in 2016, when he's running against Hillary Clinton and WikiLeaks exposes Hillary Clinton and embarrasses her and damages her greatly, he's like, oh, I love the WikiLeaks. And then the minute he takes office and he's asked about it again, he's like, oh, well, WikiLeaks is not my thing. Then he has Julian Assange arrested and then fails to pardon him. Like, there's no excuse for that.
Because I remember at January 6th, like there were a lot of people there. Like I saw the free Assange signs, and they were like hoping that it would be one of the last things he would do before Trump would leave office. And do you think Trump was just like, well, I don't want anybody digging into my shit?
I think they threatened him.
Really?
I think he was threatened. I think he was told that if you pardon Julian Assange, then we will go forward with court cases and prosecution and impeachments and all of that stuff.
Which they
And
did anyway. My
right,
God, like
which that's what I'm saying. Like that's
yeah.
I can never ever like Trump ever, because to me there's no excuse for that. It was very, he loved WikiLeaks when WikiLeaks was helping him, and that WikiLeaks wasn't doing it to help him. They were just doing it because they were given information that's in the public interest that was accurate and authenticated. So they published it. That's their whole thing. But Trump, I love the WikiLeaks. I love the WikiLeaks. And then as soon as he's, in office, he changes course, and, the people in his administration tell him to shut up. So he shuts up. Like you're a coward. Like this is a no-brainer.
It does make sense, because a lot of people were so hopeful and excited for him to do a lot of swamp draining in
he hired the
DC,
swamp.
And like
Some of
he
the
really
worst,
just
yes, the
it would
worst
make
swamp
sense that
monsters.
it would make sense that he was just super threatened,
For sure,
because he really just
but he
just
chose
didn't
those
do as much.
people. I mean,
Yeah.
he chose to hire, John Bolton, the Death Walrus. He chose to hire Mike Pompeo. He chose to appoint these people.
Do you think this is true, Misty? If Trump pardoned
maybe.
Assange, he would have
Potentially. I mean, listen, they really don't like Julian Assange. He has made some incredibly powerful enemies. So it's possible. But yeah, it's just, to me, it's completely inexcusable. And especially like if you're not going to pardon him, at least speak out. You could at least speak out. You could, now that you're not in office anymore, you could come to his defense. You could, but also I think there is a little bit of what you said, that he's afraid that WikiLeaks will expose his bullshit too, which they would if they had the opportunity. Right. They absolutely would.
Because there was an interview I listened to where they were asking Assange, like, do you ever think to not publish things you find? And he's like, sure, we think about it. But again, they're not biased. They're not, because ultimately not publishing something is going to help someone out somewhere.
Yes. And I'm so glad you just said that, because so many people said that by publishing the DNC leaks and the John Podesta emails, that he was, de facto helping Trump. But if he didn't publish that information, then he's helping Hillary Clinton. And period, end of story. What he released was 100% verifiable and authenticated, and 100% in public interest. And that is what journalism is you find the truth, it's in public interest, and you publish it. And he exposed so much corruption in the DNC, in the Hillary Clinton campaign, in the media. And that's all stuff that we deserve. We deserve to know that stuff. We deserve to know that our elections are garbage, even our primaries. We deserve to know those things. So
it's such a shame, because Trump gained so much popularity, like kind of as a populist. He wanted to represent the people who it seems like duopoly doesn't care about, the working class, like regular people. And then it seemed like this was a real missed opportunity to
really do that, to really stand up for the truth and for the people. And if you want to drain the swamp, WikiLeaks. I mean, Julian Assange has said that if even like a percentage of what is going on in Washington is published, they'll all fall. Like it's a domino effect. Once you start exposing these things, and we're going to continue to learn things through WikiLeaks that we don't even like now doesn't make sense. Like in 10 years, there's going to be a story that comes out, and we're going to go back and look at WikiLeaks releases and be like, oh my gosh, yeah, look, these people met at this place. And we're going to learn from these releases for decades to come. And it's just genuinely invaluable knowledge. And as I've always said, if we're going to have people in positions of power, which I don't know that that's necessary, but if we're going to, then we need to have people working overtime to hold those people accountable. And if I had my perfect world, if we're going to have people in positions of power, we need 1,000 WikiLeaks working across the globe, holding governments and corporations and all of those people who have just an unbelievable amount of wealth and power accountable, because they're screwing everybody over. Murdering people, torturing people. It's horrific. And so I would really like to have more WikiLeaks, lots more.
Yes, because these people get to this level and they do what they do because they know they're not accountable to anybody. I mean, think of all of us can think of a boss that we've had that's done things they shouldn't have, treated people poorly because they're like, who's going to do anything about it?
Yeah. And I mean, it's that's the United States. It's the American exceptionalism thing, right? It's we won't join the ICC. We have said that if anybody tries to arrest and hold any of our people accountable at The Hague, that we would invade. We would literally invade Norway to avoid accountability for our war crimes. It's disgusting the amount of exceptionalism that we have in not we, but our government and the people in power think that they have. And the only way we're going to be able to hold them accountable is to expose the truth. I mean, this again, WikiLeaks has only ever exposed 100% truth. That's an amazing record. An
Nobody
amazing
has
record. Nobody. That's crazy good. Like and that also bothered me about Trump, right? Like he bitched and moaned about fake news. Well, then why aren't you defending the one guy on planet Earth who we know for sure has never published any fake news? It just,
Wow.
it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense.
Yeah, he's an individual trying to drain global swamps. I mean, it's just
Yes.
it's really amazing he was able to do what he did. And I guess the US was trying to assassinate him inside the UK.
Yeah, there were plots. The Mike Pompeo, again, in his complete crazy, unhinged personal vendetta, he spoke to a bunch of CIA agents and he said, listen, we need to figure this out. We need to figure it out now. Nothing's off the table. And so plots were developed at the highest levels of the Trump administration. We don't know for sure how in the know Trump was or if he was, but I mean, this is at the highest levels of his administration. These conversations are being had. And sketches were developed. That's what they call them. Sketches were developed on different methods that they could either kidnap or assassinate him. So they thought that they could either just go into the embassy, pull him out, take him to a black site. They could, wait for an escape attempt. It reads like a bad spy novel. Like they're talking about, oh, well, the Russians may come and try to rescue him. And if, if they get into a plane, then we can do like a shootout or whatever, or, like conversations about a shootout in the streets of London. And it sounds like this really terrible, like Michael Bay movie, but it's that's really what they were planning.
What was Pompeo's? I mean, like, was there something that was leaked that made him
the Vault 7
look really bad? Okay, that was all his shit.
Because at the time he was CIA director, and Vault 7 was again the largest CIA leak in history. Hugely embarrassing. I mean, that's a big embarrassment, and it happened on his watch, and he did not like that at all.
Wow. I mean, it makes sense, but let's say they kill him. I mean, there's just going to be, you're not going to stop. Like, people.
You just make him a martyr.
People will always have the desire to expose the truth.
And that's what they've been struggling with is how do they handle this problem without making it a bigger problem? If you murder him, you make him a martyr, and all of his supporters are going to, it's just going to make people rise up even more. If you kidnap him, obviously people are going to start to question what's going on or why you're kidnapping this guy. I think, frankly, I'm not even sure that they really want to extradite him. I think that this whole thing has been an effort to destroy him mentally, physically, spiritually, all of that stuff. He has been subjected to psychological torture for over a decade. And I think that they know that if they actually extradite him to the States, that opens up a can of worms that I'm not sure that they can close. I think that would really, the support in the States is growing, but I don't think it's anywhere near what it could or should be. And if they do extradite him, that brings it here. And I think for a lot of people, it's easier to ignore it because it's happening so far away.
Right.
But if he's brought to this country, I think that will spark a lot of support and questions that they don't want to answer. So I think, honestly, and we know for sure, they're just trying to drag this out for as long as humanly possible. Everything takes forever in this case. Every appeal, every decision, everything takes forever. I genuinely think they're just trying to drag it out for as long as they can. I think, frankly, they're hoping that he'll die in prison. I mean, really.
How do we know, like, what? I mean, I know that he's in basically solitary or has been for much of his time there. How do we know, like, what exactly is happening to him? Like you mentioned, like psychological abuse. Like, how do we know what's happening to him?
So, obviously his family does speak to him on a fairly regular basis. His wife, his brother, his father, his friends, Craig Murray, John Pilger, a bunch of people. He is able to receive some visitors. It's not very consistent. And in fact, he is often kept from visiting with his lawyers, which is another huge human rights abuse. He's unable to participate in his own defense. But for example, a couple of winters ago, Belmarsh is a shit building. Like, it's not well heated. And it was freezing in the UK that year. And his wife took warm clothes for him to have, and they wouldn't give it to him. They wouldn't give him his warm clothes. So he was insulating his window with books. Yeah, I mean, they gave him a laptop with the keys glued down.
What?
So, yeah. So he wanted to be able to participate in his own defense. They will take his legal papers away from him, so he can't go through the stuff that he needs to participate in his own defense. They wouldn't give him his glasses for a while. During COVID, like the big, like 2021, where everything was COVID. Anybody that tested positive for COVID, they put in his wing, in his area of the prison.
So yeah, that just adds to the trying to kill him idea.
Yeah, and he has an underlying lung condition. He's autistic. He would be
no wonder he's so good at the internet. There we go. Now it's making sense.
Yeah.
The power of autism.
Yeah, legit though. I mean, and that's I think a lot of his like hyper focus, and his like intense dedication to justice. You know what I mean? Like, he's all about truth and justice, and that's a very autistic trait. But yeah, he has an underlying lung condition. He's autistic. He's dealt with depression, obviously, been subjected to psychological torture. In October of last year, he suffered a mini stroke during court proceedings. So yeah, it's bad. There's a lot of really terrible things happening to him. He's generally held for 22 to 23 hours inside his tiny little cell. Very limited human interaction. Visits are sparse. I think Stella's probably the one that is able, that's his wife, is probably the one that's able to visit most frequently. And even then, there will be times that she shows up, and then it's you get an hour, but then they don't have him ready. So by the time he gets in there, it's like, oh, you have 40 minutes, and they have 2 kids. She has to take the kids to this crazy prison. They have to be like searched, like in their mouths.
Searched in the kids' mouth, the bottoms of their feet.
Yeah,
the kids are like little. They're both like what, under 4,
5 and 3, I think. Now I think they're 5 and 3 now. So yeah,
sad.
it is really sad. And this is a guy they've really tried to dehumanize him. Because that's the easiest way to manufacture consent for what's happening to him is, I mean, that's why the smear campaign, they've spent over a decade trying to destroy this one man's character. I mean, they have leveled every smear you can possibly, I mean, he smears poop on the walls. He doesn't feed his cat. He skateboards in the hallway. He is a rapist. He's a hacker. He's a Russian. He's, you know what I mean? Like, everything you can think of, they have thrown at him. Because it's really easy to get people to not care, to become apathetic.
It's so pointless. Like we've already been made to look so bad. Like the CIA, our military. So like torturing this guy is not going to do anything. It's not going to unleak the documents. It's not going to take down WikiLeaks. So it's like it's only really, to Chrissie, scare other people into not being leakers.
Thank you. That's it. It's really, I often say that he is like the proverbial head on a stake outside the castle walls. He is the warning. And I think it's obvious, it's apparent that there's already been a extreme chilling effect across whistleblowing and journalism. When's the last major whistleblower that you heard?
It was like Project Veritas, and then before you knew it, James O'Keefe was out.
Yeah, James O'Keefe makes me mad too, because he doesn't talk about Assange enough. And dude, hello.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. But yeah, I mean, he really is just being used as the warning to make sure that everybody knows that if you even think about having the bravery that it takes to expose the U.S. empire, this is what they will do to you.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't cover it because they probably feel like, oh, it's so much bigger than them. There's nothing they can do. They can't put a dent in it.
Yeah, I feel that pain.
Those are just my initial feelings. Like, what could I possibly do? Like, what would all of the retweeting and email writing do?
I mean, honestly, I think what it's really about at this point, because we're never going to get justice through the courts. The courts are completely bought and corrupted. There's so many conflicts of interest. The judges are owned and operated by people who don't want him to be free. And so we're not going to get it that way. And I think that this is legit how we get anything is mass public pressure. Like, we need people to be screaming about this. We need to make it politically untenable for them to continue this persecution. That's the only way that it stops. And frankly, I mean, I shouldn't say this because I want people to help us. You know what I mean? But we may not be able to. Like, I am very honest with myself and with others that we are fighting a losing battle. We are punching way above our weight class. And this is no joke, but I think that this is so unbelievably important. I'm a big free speech person, big time. And this is the end of free speech. I mean, we don't really have free speech now, but this is nail in the coffin. I don't know how we ever come back from this. And
even if he dies, like, it's just the damage has been done to, like, what they've done to him.
Yeah.
For just publishing information.
And it doesn't matter what your thing is, whatever your issue is, if you care about the environment or education, or if you're anti-war, or if you, whatever it is, you cannot effectively fight for that thing if you cannot speak. If you do not have the ability to share and obtain information, to educate yourself and others, to have conversation, to have debate. And we're very, very, very quickly losing that ability. I think everybody is seeing it. The censorship is going out of control. And that's only going to continue to escalate. And if they are able to extradite and prosecute Assange, that opens Pandora's box. Like, it's over. It's over at that point.
Then it's like, then we're China. Like,
that's legitimate fascism. Like, that's legit. Like, that's the first thing fascists do, is seek to control information and to shut down all dissent. And that's what this is.
Wow. It's just so sad because I was watching this video and, like, his two little boys, like, they look just like him. And they look just like him when he was little.
Yeah.
And I hope they feel good growing up, like, knowing that their dad is a free speech hero. And
I mean, I think eventually they will come to appreciate that. But what they need is their dad. Like, they don't need they need their dad. Like, all little kids need their parents, their dad. And he's already lost out on so much of their lives. And it's just, it makes me, like, that's always what gets me. I'm a mom. Like, that always gets me. Every time I see videos of them, or, try to think about what they must, and they're too young to even intellectualize it. And it's just, it really makes me sad that they are put in this position. And, it's really, and
Dad is absent. He's just not there. He has, like, very little impact on their life.
And having to go visit their father in a maximum security prison. That's terrible. Yeah. That's a horrible way to grow up.
How did you first become passionate about this whole case?
Well, I mean, like I said, I've always been, like, a big free speech, press freedom person. And so I was always, like, a casual supporter of WikiLeaks ever since their inception. I would buy merch and read the leaks and donate and all of that stuff. Obviously the Iraq and Afghanistan war logs were huge. All of that stuff was great, but I didn't really become super, super active until he was pulled out of the Ecuadorian embassy, because foolishly I thought, okay, this is bad. Like, he's stuck in this embassy. That's not great, but they're not going to arrest a journalist for doing journalism. Come on. They did that. And when that happened, I guess something just like, I have, like, hardcore ADHD. And,
same. Right. It's not even like he broke into the military or he broke in somewhere. I think one of his charges does have to do with, like, hacking, but
that's based on a lie.
Like, it's this information was just simply, like, give it to him. So he didn't break anything in getting the information.
No, he did what journalists all over the world do. They're doing right now as we speak. There are journalists who are working with sources to obtain information to publish. That's what journalists do. That's the whole point of especially national security journalism. But the claim that the Computer and Abuse and Intrusion Act charge that they leveled against him, that's based on a hardcore lie that's also been revealed over the past couple of years. I think it was 2020, maybe. I don't know. Time doesn't make any sense. But so they had the initial indictment against Assange. They realized that was not going to be good enough because it was weak as fuck. So they essentially use this guy called Siggi Thordarson, who's an Icelandic douchebag, who was initially like legit. Hold on, you'll hear. But he was initially, or at one point, a very low level like volunteer for WikiLeaks. Turns out he embezzled $50,000 from WikiLeaks and was impersonating Julian Assange, and has actually been charged and convicted of doing those things in Iceland. But the FBI went and talked to Mr. Thordarson and offered him immunity in order to manufacture a case against Julian Assange. This is a convicted pedophile, a diagnosed sociopath, and a lifelong criminal, like whole life of being a bad guy. They gave him immunity, and then he manufactured information about Julian Assange, asking him to hack into Icelandic politicians' emails. Dude's not even a hacker. And he has since come out in it's called Stundin, Stundin. I don't know how you say it in Icelandic. But he gave an interview with some journalists where he admitted that he completely fabricated all of the claims that he made against Julian Assange in order to get immunity from the FBI.
Nothing happened to him for admitting that?
Now he has. Like, he was protected by the FBI until he admitted that he lied, and now suddenly he's been arrested in Iceland because he told
I'm going to use, I like this. I agree with this person in the chat. I'm going to use the term Icelandic douchebag as a new insult.
He is a douchebag. It's very accurate. He is 100%.
Wow.
Yeah, he's epic level scumbag for sure.
And I guess there are opportunities to bring this issue to the surface again, like various, the press freedom groups like the ACLU, the Amnesty International, the Human Rights Watch. They wrote to Biden, about 2 years ago, February of 21. So I guess any new person who comes into power, or with every election, it can be, this issue can be brought to the surface again. But it does kind of seem hopeless from everything.
Yeah. I feel that. And I've been doing this for years now, and every day I have to battle myself. Is it worth it? But there's two options. You can lay down and die, or you can fight back. And I'm not really a lay down and die kind of person. So I'll do what I can. I'm only one person, and the movement is growing. There's a ton of supporters all across the world. But it is genuinely going to take a mass public pressure, and that may not even be enough, because I really think that we've kind of reached the point where they do not give a shit. They don't care. They can neutralize us at any second. And you know what I'm saying? So it's not looking good. I won't lie to people. I do want people to get involved. Don't take my pessimism as an excuse to not try. Every little bit helps. But it really is just so much bigger than Julian Assange. I think a lot of people get focused on him as a person, which, listen, his life is worth fighting for. No human being should be treated the way that he's being treated, especially not for what he is being, treated that way for, just telling the truth. But it's not even really about him as a person, his personality. People always say, oh, well, he's weird. Well, yeah, he's autistic. He's a little weird. He's very blunt. People use the smears against him, and none of that stuff matters. This is about, like I said, the United States is seeking global jurisdiction over information and journalism. And that fucking terrifies me, frankly.
Yeah, they can kind of do whatever they want to whoever, you don't have to be an American citizen, just anybody. If you make the U.S. look bad, you have a target on your back.
Yeah. Yeah. And
you just gotta hope that every once in a while you'll see a politician, or all right, you'll be like, all right, Rand Paul, he seems like or I don't know, some people see a politician all right, they seem to be doing the right thing. I don't know, they're probably
not on Assange, but Rand Paul, where are you at? You just hit a soft spot for me, because he pisses me off. No. We saw him at Freedom Fest. I was at Freedom Fest doing Assange stuff, also with TNT Radio. And one of my friends bought his book and went over and was like, hey, why don't you talk about Assange, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, well, I do. No, he doesn't. I follow this stuff intensely. He does not talk about Julian Assange. And then she was like, hey, well, we have a big tapestry that we're trying to get people to sign, and we will present it to his father and his brother, Julian's father and brother. They're in the States right now on a tour for the film Ithaca that they made. It's a documentary about their fight to free Julian. And so we gave him WikiLeaks flag last year that we had signed. Now we're trying to get this tapestry signed. And she's like, well, our booth is right over there. Come over, you can sign the thing, whatever. And our booth was right across from like the shared media space, right? Where anybody could come and do an interview. And so later that night, he came and was doing an interview. And I'm like, perfect. So after he finished his interview, we're like, and I even called him sir, which I have no respect for politicians. I don't generally do the whole sir thing. I was like, Senator Paul, sir, please, would you talk to us? We're free speech activists. And he was like, I don't really feel, I don't like feeling like I'm being forced into something. Nobody's fucking forcing you, you douche. Like we were just very politely.
Doesn't know enough about it.
He knows.
Because I feel like once you know, how do you not become passionate about it?
His dad, I just saw his dad at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. His dad signed it. No questions asked. No questions asked.
Wow.
Yeah, he pisses me off. I think the reason why he doesn't speak is because it's politically challenging for him if he does. And that's why really no elected officials speak on it. I mean, Justin
they're
Amash
basically like the very top people.
Yeah.
Right. Anybody who's running for something is down here, and the people that are in charge of freeing Assange, I imagine, all up here. So they're just trying to get here.
Yeah, it's like it's opportunism. He doesn't want to impact his future ability to get elected to his same current office or potentially the presidency or whatever. The only people who have ever really spoken on it was Tulsi Gabbard and Justin Amash. And Tulsi, they both did it right before they left Congress.
Oh man.
So, it's a tough one. Like we can't even get like people who should, like, it should be a very easy thing for them to speak out. Like nobody will talk about it. Nobody will even. Bernie Sanders literally ran away from somebody who asked.
But he like, if it weren't for WikiLeaks and Julian, like, would he have known? Well, he probably would have known how bad he got fucked over. And it's like, yeah,
he was in on that.
He's got a nice house, multiple houses,
couple houses. Yeah, he's just worried about his next book deal, as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, dude was given literally everything that he needed to challenge the 2016 primary, and instead he dropped out and endorsed and stumped for the human personification of everything that he claims to stand against, and then won't even say Julian Assange's name. So I mean, again, the politicians in general are nothing but opportunistic cowards, and that's really, they're all just concerned about getting their next career move. So it sucks, but that's the reality of where we're at.
Yeah, you get really, and I remember the Bernie supporters were so fired up, and then you learn that about him, and you're just like, well, I guess I'm back to being apathetic again and feeling politically homeless. And it's you rally behind somebody, and you're like, oh, you're not even going to stand up for yourself? Wow, okay.
Not even stand up for himself, stand up for the millions of people who donated and phone banked and canvassed and were genuinely trying to help him with his political revolution. You know what I mean? Like that's why, I mean, I like watching him shit on people who, I mean, I met people in 2016 who would skip meals to send him $5. And then watching him throw them under the bus, not once, but twice. I mean, and then calling somebody like Joe Biden your good friend. He's a fucking war criminal. If Joe Biden's your good friend, you need better friends.
Ugh. Get a friend who can ride a bike and walk upstairs. That's the very least.
Yeah.
The bar has been set so low for president now. I'm just like, just be able to ride a bike. Okay.
Yeah.
Just don't shit your pants at the Vatican. That's enough for me.
Be able to form a coherent sentence. Like, can we get that in a president? I mean, that would be nice. I would like that.
Our standards are so low now.
I know, right?
Oh my gosh. You're like blowing my mind, Misty.
I feel like I'm info dumping on you, and I'm sorry for that. It is a lot, though. I mean, this is something that's been going on for 13 years now, and it's a lot. Like I said, they've leveled every smear in the book against him. There's been all different kinds of, I mean, just absolute shenanigans happening in what's happening to him. And it's like, I always feel a little bad because I'm like, this is a lot, and I talk really fast, and then I'm just like throwing information at people. But I don't know how else to do it. It's the only thing.
Good. I think overall, like, even if you can't get people to be passionate and speak out like you are, it's the overall positive is like, just be aware of the systems in place and the reality of the world that we're living in, and what could happen to you if you do something like leak a bunch of documents, like And
For
and
sure.
at least know for the next Julian Assange who's gonna come along and do this, like, "No, okay, this is what can happen to you," and
Yeah,
it just
100%.
yeah.
And I don't expect everybody to be as obsessive as I am. I'm self-aware. I realize I'm obsessive. I hyperfixate on things, and this is something that I've chosen to hyperfixate on. I don't expect everybody to do that, but everybody can at least be aware. Like you said, just be aware that the fact that this is happening, it's happening in broad daylight. A journalist is being essentially tortured to death for publishing the truth. That's fucking nuts.
But it also I mean, it is horrible, but it also makes me really excited about, like, that humanity, like, there is possible, like, among us, somebody can rise up and put such a huge dent and, like, scare the shit out of our government and multiple governments, like, we have so much more power than we realize, and, like,
Yes.
he made t very much the ultimate sacrifice in doing so, but he's a legend, and, it does kind of give me hope in humanity, like, to
Yeah.
leave to that have that be your legacy. I mean, that's
Yeah,
ultimately a net positive for
for
him.
sure. I wish that we had more people like him. I understand why we don't. I mean, who wants to go through what he's going through, right? I think that that's enough to scare just about anybody off. But yeah, it does. The fact that there are people who are willing to take those kinds of risks and to literally put it all on the line to, expose the most vile cretins on planet Earth. That's good. We definitely need more of that. I don't think people realize how bad it is and how disgusting these people are, how corrupt. I mean, we are legitimately controlled by psychopaths. They don't have any humanity. These are people who have zero humanity whatsoever. And the things that they are guilty of, just in what WikiLeaks has exposed. I mean, I mentioned a few of the things that are in the Iraq and Afghanistan war logs. The torture, the rape, the absolute destruction, murders of entire families. I mean, that's just a like tip of the iceberg of what they're doing. I mean, Khalid Al-Masri, I highly recommend everybody go and check out his story. I do warn you that it's no joke, really hard. Like the stuff that they did to
How
him.
do you spell that?
Khalid, and then I think I can't remember if it's EL or AL. Hold on, I'll Google
Okay.
it for you. But he again was just a guy. Khalid
Just a guy.
Masri. Yeah, and just mistaken identity. Was kidnapped. Okay, so it is AL and then MASRI. But he was one of the people that testified in Julian's hearings in his defense. Because I mean, he was mistaken identity, just some dude, had nothing to do with anything, was kidnapped, taken to a black site, and tortured. Even after they realized that they had the wrong guy, continued to torture him. And the things that I won't say it here because it's really bad, the stuff that they did to him. Like really bad. But I think people need to be aware of that stuff. And that's happening right now. There are people in black sites right now being tortured by our government. And that's really disgusting. Like that's just
And even if our politicians don't have the balls to like speak out about it, it's like you hope that the knowledge of it makes some impact.
yes. And I think it has. People will often tell me that, oh, well, what good was it what he did? Like the sacrifices that he made, nothing changed. And that's not true. I think I changed. WikiLeaks changed me. And in turn, like my kids will be better educated about what's going on. And I think that that's true across a lot of people. So I do think that there has been change. There has been an impact. Do I wish it were more? Do I wish that it had caused like global outcry and that people were held accountable and that politicians were, thrown in prison and that, military commanders and, yes, I wish that all of those people would have accountability. I wish that, none of them have even seen the inside of a courtroom. It's crazy. But it's a stepping stone. Like this is as this continues and as more people become aware, I think that it does have the potential to really impact humanity in general. And as we're starting to see like threat of nuclear annihilation in World War III, and we're trying to start shit with not one, but two nuclear powers, I think that that's really renewed a lot of people's interest in what's actually happening and what our military is actually doing. And so I'm just trying to like kind of capitalize on that energy to get people to be aware of what's happening to Julian Assange, because like I said, we need more of what he did and is doing still. I mean, even in prison, he's still exposing the corruption of government. I mean,
Really? Oh my God. I mean, don't
well, I
they
mean, if
take
you
all
think
his
about,
things away from him?
well, yeah, no, I don't mean actively, but I mean just
Okay.
in what's happening to him. He is exposing the corruption of
True.
government. He's exposing, I mean, like I said, the people who were involved in his case, the judges and all of that stuff, they all have, it's unbelievable conflicts of interest. I mean, we exposed the fact that Sheldon Adelson was paying UC Global to spy on him, and that was happening through the Trump administration, and the CIA was plotting to murder. I mean, all of the stuff that's happening to him, a byproduct of that is he is exposing the corruption of government. It's unfortunate that he's likely going to die. I mean, I hate to be that negative, but dude's not doing well. I mean, he had a mini stroke in October. He's
very depressed. Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't be after more than a decade of psychological torture? I mean, he's doing, I mean, better. I think that he is, I know Stella said that he loves like hearing about what people are doing and the different actions and stuff that people are trying to take, and knowing that like he hasn't been forgotten. I think that helps. But I don't know. I genuinely just don't know how long any human being could take. I don't know how much you can take. And he's a pretty tough dude. Like, I mean, he's even said, you know, he joked one time when people were asking him, like, aren't you afraid of what they'll do to you? And he said, you know, I come from like a long lineage of people who are like they live a long time, and I'm pretty difficult to kill. You know, he was just joking, but I mean, he's gone through a lot, and the fact that he's still alive is amazing. But I don't know how much longer that can happen. And there's a very real threat that if he is essentially, if extradition becomes imminent, there's a very I honestly think that he would take himself out. I mean, that's a very real concern. His family has that concern. The psychologists who have worked with him have that concern.
Wow.
He does not want to come here. Do you know what they will do to him if he comes
How could
here?
it be worse than what he's already gone through?
Well, I think that they want to extradite the guy to the country that was plotting to assassinate him. That's crazy all by itself. There should never be a conversation about, yeah, we're going to extradite somebody to a country that was plotting to murder that person. And he will be put in ADX Florence under what's called special administrative measures, and it is essentially solitary confinement on steroids. You aren't really allowed. There's a handful of people that are allowed to be on your visitation list. Visits are incredibly limited. You have to have a prison guard in the room with you when you have visits. They're very short. You're not really allowed to have many phone calls. Your family members are prohibited from speaking about how you're doing or what's happening to you in prison. You are put into a cell. You have very little human interaction. Guards are trained not to speak to the prisoners. And it's basically like just being thrown in a hole to be forgotten about. It is the worst possible. I honestly can't believe that it's legal. It is torture. Straight up. It is legitimate torture. And that's where he will go, is ADX Florence, most likely.
Where is that?
It's in Colorado. It's like the big time Supermax prison.
No conjugal visits? I bet probably not.
No, like it's no joke. We did a big special with like special coverage on the Action for Assange YouTube channel, where we went through, there's like a special administrative measures like handbook or whatever, like all of the rules and stuff, and it is like genuinely horrific. It's where the Unabomber, like that's where they put the worst of the worst.
Who would work there? I don't know.
Really terrible people. You know what I mean? Yeah, people who don't have any respect for human life, or I can't. There's no way I could ever work in an environment like that. It seems like that would be almost torture for yourself,
right?
You would think.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah,
We got a couple of people in the chat that want to shout you out from CEB Applejack. Free
Applejack.
Assange. Hands off Assange. Thank
I
you for
love
the super
Applejack.
chat. Applejack again. Gotta send a super chat in appreciation of Misty.
Thanks, Applejack.
Oh, thanks, Apple. And Applejack again. Thank you, Chrissy, for having Misty on. Of course.
Applejack's my friend. I'll pay you later, Applejack.
Aw, Misty's blowing my mind right now. Grumpy Dwarf. Julian Assange needs to be freed now. He does. That doesn't look like it's gonna happen. This is very upsetting. It's like it
Yeah.
feels you want to talk about a story where you feel the more you learn, the more hopeless you feel.
Yes. It's really bad. And again, I don't know. I don't know that they really want to extradite him. I'm really unsure about where we're headed. Like we're right now waiting for the defense team put in what's called a perfected grounds for appeal. So in the UK, you have to apply for an appeal. They did that once. The request for an appeal was denied. And so basically the perfected grounds for appeal is like a Hail Mary. It's basically just reformulating your argument and saying, are you really sure you don't want to hear our appeal? It's likely to be denied. There are a couple different legal avenues that they could pursue. They could go to the European Court of Human Rights. I don't know that they will do that. They're kind of keeping the game plan close to the vest for obvious reasons. But if that appeal request is denied, he could be on a plane within 24 hours and headed to the United States. And he will be, if he is brought to the United States, the trial that he will have in the United States will be held in the Eastern District of Virginia, which is Fed fucking city. It's nothing but FBI, CIA, NSA, Department of Defense. All of those people live there. So that's your jury pool. It's called extradition court. Nobody wins. 0 people win in this court. John Kiriakou has spoken about this at great length. It's the same court that he had to go through. He did not win. He even hired O.J. Simpson's lawyer to try to help. And the guy told him, if you were in any other district in this country, you would have a chance. You do not have a chance here. It's completely rigged. And the trial will happen completely behind closed doors. And in extradition court, you are unable to present a defense. So he cannot he can't even present the court with a reason why he did these things, or, hey, this was in human interest. This was in the public interest. I did this thing. So you can't present a defense. It's basically you lose before you even step inside. So he will not win. There's absolutely no chance. Not to mention they were spying on his conversations with his legal team. He's fucked if he comes here. I mean, that really is what it is. And I mean, the only thing I can say is potentially support in the United States will explode at that point. Hopefully. Yeah. I don't know. I wish support would explode now. It's frustrating to me that it's hard. Like I can't get people to care about it. So,
yeah, you're doing your best though, for sure. Vertigo. Is El Chapo Guzman in that prison?
I'm not sure. Probably.
And they can't even buddy up. No friends.
No, there's no interaction between inmates. There's again, even
you can't trade snacks. Like it's just nothing.
No. The guards are like legitimately trained to not interact or converse with prisoners in any way, shape, form, or fashion. It's bad.
I would suck at that job. I'd be the worst.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I would kill myself. There's absolutely no way I could handle that. It's terrible. What
can people do other than follow you on Sarcasm Stardust? They can follow DEA Campaign on Twitter. They can go to AssangeDefense.org and Wikileaks.org. Anything else in particular?
I mean, there's a ton of events coming up. There's the 20th anniversary of Iraq. So there's going to be, I think it's March 18th, the DEA campaign, which is not like the DEA that everybody hates. It's the Don't Extradite Assange campaign. That's the largest Assange advocacy group in the UK. They're calling for a global day of action on March 18th. So you can try to find an event near you or be an event near you. Really, I think the biggest thing is just talking to people about it, because most people have no idea what's happening here. They've never heard of Julian Assange, or maybe they've heard of him and they're like, oh yeah, he's that weird guy, or he helped Trump get elected or whatever. There's a lot of like just ridiculous misinformation. So having conversations in real life and online too. I mean, I do that. I'm like a prolific Twitterer. But like in real life, I think having those conversations is really beneficial. But so there will be March 18th, tons of events. April 11th is the 4-year anniversary of his arrest. So that marks 4 years in Belmarsh prison, a journalist, and he's being held on remand. No charge, guys. He has no charge. He's just being held because the US said so. Like that's it. And he's being held in the Guantanamo of the UK. He's a journalist, no history of violence, no criminal history, none whatsoever. And he's being held in a supermax prison. It's absurd to me that they won't even like release him on house arrest or something. It's ridiculous. So April 11th is the 4-year anniversary. There will be events. I'm planning something for DC, but there will be events globally again. There's usually events in Tulsa, Seattle, San Francisco, Boston, Denver, DC. Those are usually our big, like
New York, maybe.
New York, yep.
Okay.
There's 2 different groups in New York, so they sometimes come to DC rather than do their own thing, but I mean sometimes they do their own thing too. So yeah, there will be events all over the place, all over the world: Germany, Italy, Australia, UK, all of that stuff. So just keep an eye out for those events. Show up if you can. Spread the word if you can. That's always nice. I mean, if you want to do the whole call a politician thing, I don't think it does much good, but it only takes a couple minutes, so why not? Or sending emails. I also have a thread on my Twitter. Again, it's Sarcasm Stardust. I went through and got contact information, 3 different contact information for different local publications, like local newspapers. And you can, like, it's really easy. You can just click and like send them an email, because I think if we can get into like the smaller newspapers in each state, we can maybe encourage them to start covering it, because again, this affects the future of journalism. So, and since we've seen recently the 5 publications that worked with Assange on the Iraq and Afghanistan war logs, they finally came out in his defense, sort of. They managed to smear him while kind of defending him, but whatever. So you can go and yeah, just send out some emails to some local publications, maybe try to get them to cover it. You know, just whatever you can do. Again, I'm not asking anybody to be as obsessive as I am, but we sure could use help. It's we are waiting for that final decision from the UK High Court on the perfected grounds for appeal. And then this whole thing could explode overnight. I mean, it could suddenly be he's on a plane and being extradited and all of that good stuff. So yeah, there's tons of things that you can do. I think really just talking to people, trying to educate yourself on it. Like I told you, it's a lot. Like when you asked for information, I was like, fuck, I don't even know what to send her. Like,
it's very fucked up. Yeah. And there's I still have a 40-minute documentary that I need to watch. I watched all the short things I could. No, I highly, that documentary was made by Juan Passarelli, who's a good friend of mine. He is an amazing, I love him so much. He is hilarious, but he was a friend of Julian's. He's been a friend of Julian's for many years now. And that documentary is amazing. It's less than 40 minutes and it just like packs a ton of information in there. So definitely check that out. It's really good. Will put this in the link in the description of this episode. And I'll put, if you don't mind, I'll put all the other links that you sent me in the description, so people can just get up to speed. I tried to send, things that were good, like overall explainers without getting too far into the weeds, because there's a lot of bullshit and a lot of, it's a very tangled web. So, I mean, it's really easy to like rabbit hole, you know what I mean? So I don't want people to feel overwhelmed. You do not have to be an expert on all things Julian Assange to speak on this. You absolutely do not. Wait, what's his astrological sign? Go. I do not know. He was born July 3rd. Whatever. I don't know astrological signs. Okay. July 3rd. He's a Cancer. Okay. Cancer. I don't know. I don't know astrological signs. Yeah, but he was born July 3rd. Okay. But yeah, you really don't have to be an expert. It's like I said, it's not really about Assange. They've tried to make it about him because it's much easier to demonize a person than it is an idea and a value. And we should all value speech and the freedom of truth.
And so that's really what this is about. So don't get overwhelmed with the minutia. It's you can speak on this without knowing all of the ins and outs. I mean, there are still things I don't know, and I've been like obsessive about this for years now. So
Wow.
yeah, this is everybody can fight this fight, and we all should be.
Magnum Norris, thanks for the super chat. So our government is corrupt? God damn it. What was 1776 for then?
I know, right?
It
Who
was
would
a
have thunk
start.
it?
We have to do multiple 1776s, I guess.
We need some legitimate something.
We need something.
We do. It's really bad.
Misty,
really
you're the
bad.
best. Thank you for coming on and breaking all this down for us, especially
Yeah.
me, as an Assange novice, but maybe I'm like,
No, I appreciate you
slightly
not
less
being
so.
scared off by it. Like I realize for somebody who's like uninitiated, it is a lot. So I appreciate the fact that you were willing to dive into it and were willing to have me on. You know, I'm definitely not like the expert of all Assange. But I hope I didn't overwhelm everybody
No, not at
in the
all.
chat.
I'm like, you're an expert. I'm like, you have portraits in the background. Like you're in pretty
Shout out
deep.
to Artsy Marxist who made that for me. I just like to support my friends, and she does cool artwork, so I had her do that for me. And then that's
Very
Magnus, the Boogaloo boy everybody was scared of. He's my friend.
Cool. Oh.
That was his stuff. So yeah, I just like to support my friends, and that was two of my friends did those things. So I bought them.
Those are great. From Vertigo, Assange exposed Hillary Clinton. He is cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's mega props.
And what's interesting about that is when he exposed George W. Bush, liberals fucking loved him. He did a TED talk and he got a standing ovation from a room full of liberals. But then when he exposed Hillary Clinton, boom, over. They were done with him. So the tribalism will kill you. Do not be a tribalist.
That's a great
not
quote.
good. Yeah.
Misty, thanks for coming on. You're the best.
for
I'm
having
gonna
me.
follow everything you do. Love to have you back.
Anytime.
We
And I would love to have you on my show. I talked to Frank
201.
about it. So
Ooh.
yeah.
Definitely. We'll definitely keep in touch. Thank you to the chat for all your comments and questions, and we will see you next time. Bye.